Hey, good evening. Welcome to Prophecy Roundtable. Scott and I are going to do a deep dive into Revelation 9. Ooh, this is going to be fun. Now, spoiler, okay, it's not Apache helicopters like we heard in the late great Planet Earth. The creatures that are coming out of the abyss are big and scary, and they're coming from the underworld. So we're going to take a look at the creatures. I think it's one creature. I think it's a composite of a creature. We'll certainly hear what my amazing and esteemed co-host has to say about that. But we're going to take a look at it, and we'll just let the evidence lead us and see where it takes us, and we'll have fun. So, Scott, pleasure to be with you again.
You
This
as
is
well.
always wonderful. And why don't we let's just dig right in. What do you say?
Okay, yeah, I rewound this back. So the fourth angel sounded, third of the sun was struck, third of the moon, third of the stars. So the third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And so before we get into these demon bugs, whatever they are, uh, I wanted to get your opinion here on how are you looking at this, Doug? As far as like, how does a third get struck? What's your understanding of that? I'll be honest. I see the connection back to the fourth day, and then
Okay.
in the fourth bowl, you also see the sun, moon, and stars being affected. But
Yeah.
I've read many different theories. I would say I obviously don't have a strong position or opinion on what this is trying to convey.
Yeah.
Just wondering your
Well,
thoughts.
this is where I think when we let go of this strict chronology and just understand that these are the order of the judgments is given to us, obviously, in a chronological fashion. That's how they're laid out. But the order in which they occur is not necessarily the order that they are given to us. And I like to think of it like an autobiography. You might start your autobiography in the last chapter of your life or wherever you are, and my boss said to me, get out. And then it made me think about all the stuff that happened. I mean, movies happen like that all the time, right? That sometimes they start at the end and then they go back to the beginning so that you have this context. And I really think Revelation is giving us a series of pronouncements of judgment, but the order that they're actually going to take place on planet Earth may not be the order in which they're given to us. So I think these are more like bullet points, or they're highlight reels. Sometimes things can be happening simultaneously, even though they may be designated as different judgments, but they might be happening simultaneously, or they may happen in clusters, and then there may be longer periods of time until the next cluster of judgments. So what I see is Satan basically gets booted out of heaven. That happens in Revelation chapter 12. He's both the dragon, and of course, he's Satan as we know him. The third of the stars are one third of the angels that are cast out with him. I would say that corresponds with this fourth trumpet, where the third trumpet, where the star is cast down to earth. It then causes the waters to turn into bitterness or wormwood. And then from there, there's this darkening. How does it happen? Well, that actually happens in the next one, where it says, so if you go to chapter 5, verse 1, I think that is going to explain it for us. I think that
All
will
right.
kind of
So
solve our
okay.
problem here.
All right, and I looked and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. And so then the
Yep.
fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star falling from heaven to earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. I believe this is clearly an entity, uh,
Yep.
obviously not a
Well, yeah.
literal star. And he opened the
Yeah.
bottomless pit, and smoke rose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke,
Yeah.
locusts
So,
came on the earth. So,
well, yeah, just stop right there. So I think that is the cause. Right. So I think in the fourth trumpet, we have the effect that the sun, the moon, and stars are covered by a third. I don't think anything happens to the physical sun 93 million miles away from us. I just don't think anything
it's
happens to it.
it's
Des-
space dust, dude.
Despite what?
It's space stuff.
Despite what a friend of ours told us. Yeah. Yeah, I'm still in disbelief on that one. I'm still in disbelief on that one. But, yeah, I don't think anything happens to the physical sun 93 million miles away. I think it's perspective that when the smoke comes up out of the abyss, well, if you've seen a volcano, whether in real life, I've not seen one in real life, that would be kind of pretty amazing to see that in real life, but I've seen plenty of pictures and videos, and it's pretty obvious what happens. And I used to live in Southern California where there were a lot of forest fires. And I'll tell you, there were some doozies. And I remember the sky darkening just a bit, but especially at night, you could see it when the moon was turning to blood because of all the ash that was in the air. In the 2011 volcanic eruption in Iceland, I forget the name of that mountain. It's pretty hard to pronounce, but that volcano
Kyrgyzstan.
erupted.
I
Say it
don't
again.
know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just making up an
Something
Icelandic
Icelandic,
sounding name.
yeah. Yeah. But when that happened, I remember seeing some pretty radical photos of where the sun looked like it was covered with sackcloth. The moon was blood red, and then the sky or the stars you could not see because there was so much ash in the sky. So I think this is just cause and effect. And I would say Satan getting kicked to the earth, and then and it says a star. I saw a star having fallen to the earth. All right. So in the fifth trumpet, what's special about that trumpet is that he has the key and he opens it, and that's pretty crazy, right? So that's how I would resolve it. But I'm curious to hear,
No, no. I
or
mean,
you sounds like
I
you may
think
not have a resolution, but that would be my
no, no.
resolution.
That makes sense because again, it's chiastic, and so I believe that this fourth, you have God's timepieces. I mean, it's that those are the sun, moon, and stars are for his appointed times. They're for his moedim. They're for signs. And I can certainly see how, especially if we view this thematically, or even if we view it chronologically, we go back to the first, second, and third trumpet. You can see there's going to be a lot going on that could certainly cause the sun, moon, and stars to darken. The third part is, I guess, sort of what's throwing me off. So I
That's
don't know.
true.
I don't know
Yeah.
how to interpret that.
Yeah.
Is it literal?
I mean,
How
maybe from the forest fires, you're right. Well, the forest fires could also do that. If you have one third of the trees burning up, that would also
yeah, that's
darken
that's
the
that's why I
sky.
went
That
back.
would, yeah,
Yeah, that's why I went
yeah,
back. So you got hell and fire
yeah,
follow, mingled with blood, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned
yeah,
up. So you got this great
yeah,
mountain burning with fire thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. So you have this great
yeah.
star fell from
Maybe
heaven,
you're
burned
right.
up. So again, and sandwiched in between the
That's
first
cool.
three and the last three is this
Hmm.
is how the sun, moon, and stars are affected. So if we look at it chiastically, that's sort of the center. And a lot of
Yeah,
times, the
yeah,
biblical writers the main theme would be actually in the center, not as our Greek mindset goes one, two, three,
yep,
four, five, six, seven, and seven's always the conclusion, and that would be the conclusion of our pre-wrath brothers. That
yeah,
and it would be
yeah,
the conclusion of most
yeah.
pre-trib people. Of course, I really always used to ask myself, why are people so engaged and enthralled in studying Revelation if they never ever think? I mean, from an academic standpoint, it's fun to talk about, but why are you really? Don't get your panties bent out of shape if you think the
Right.
church is not going to be here. So maybe they're hoping their books will be left behind for
Yeah.
those going through the great tribulation to read. So let me shift us
Yeah,
over back.
it's crazy. The people that are left behind are the good guys, actually. Because the angels are going to take out the bad guys
Theirs.
first, and then leave the good guys. But
All
that's
right.
another story. I think you're onto something, man. Yeah, all the forest fires. I mean, it just naturally follows, right? You have tons of stuff burning up, lots and lots and lots of stuff. And I think when the text just makes sense where it is, we don't have to go looking for another thing. And yeah, I like that solution. I hadn't thought of that. That's really cool. So maybe when the pit opens, then you have even more smoke
Oh,
that is happening, and maybe that's what leads to in the bowls where it says that the sun was darkened. And then I think Jesus in Matthew 24, I think he gives basically a summary statement of that, because he says immediately after the tribulation of those days. This is where I would put a colon in the text. Keep in mind there was basically no punctuation in the text, so this would be my thing. But after the tribulation of those days, colon, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. I think that's a summary statement of what happens in the tribulation. That's how I read it. But yeah, I mean, he's talking about the same thing. And of course, we're seeing these things happening in the midst of, well, I don't mean the middle, but in the context of the tribulation.
Right.
So
let's see, verse. Okay,
yeah.
so then out of the smoke, locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power. So they're given this power, and I believe it's ultimately Yeshua that allows them to have this power. Now, that might be through the vehicle or the agency of Satan or the dragon. But as the scorpions of the earth have power, they were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And Doug, I was probably for years, I had said, and because I thought it, that these demon bugs would, and I believe I said it on this show the first couple of years we were on it, that these locusts, don't take the mark. You do not have to have taken the mark at this stage whenever this event occurs for these locusts to torture you. If you don't have the seal of God, it does not matter if you've taken the mark and worshiped the image of the beast. These locusts, you're going to have no protection. And I see a major connection back to Ezekiel when you have the one messenger is told to go mark those that are sealed, and those are protected, and then the others I think it's the other 6 that go out and wreak havoc upon Jerusalem. And again, I don't believe that prophecy has been fulfilled. I can see that there's certainly allusions to what's going on here when this occurs. Would you concur, differ, have a?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I get the impression that the one that lets them out of the abyss is probably the one granting them the authority.
Well,
I mean, I know, in the grand scheme of things, God is allowing a lot of things to happen, but I don't get the impression that God's like, okay, go ahead and do this thing. I think it's more Satan, because I think he's the one that's opening the abyss. And I really do think that here he's basically getting he's getting his reinforcements,
well,
and
you're saying that, but it's these are torture devices for his kingdom. In other words, this is having no effect on those that have the seal of God and are part of God's kingdom. Why would you
sure,
want to? I mean, again, we're talking Satan here, okay? But
sure,
essentially, what you're doing is every human being is going to be tortured so bad that they will seek death. Verse 6, they will seek death and not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
again, I see this as sort of like maybe they're under his dominion as Yah allows it, but I'm seeing these as agents of judgment against those who don't have the seal of God. I mean, because they have
yeah,
those alive at this stage have zero. If you have the seal, you can literally scoff and mock like Elijah did Jezebel towards these entities, whatever they are, these locusts, these chimeras, whatever they are not meant to judge those that have the seal of God. They're only tormenting and judging those outside the kingdom, those not in covenant, those not sealed. So again, that's why I'm saying,
yeah, yeah. I
It
know what
doesn't
you're
make
saying, and
any
I
sense.
totally get it.
It
Yeah,
wouldn't make any sense for
yeah.
General Patton to go, okay, I'm going to go, all my captains, colonels, all my privates, all you guys go lay in a bunch of scorpions, and I want them to sting the crap out of you, and then we're going to go battle the Germans in a tank battle tomorrow. I don't get it. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I
hardly the
mean,
way to strengthen an
I
army.
think there's a few models, but there's a few models we can look at. I mean, you have Stalin, like, he killed his people all the time, and so that was not a deterrent. You had Pharaoh, who had his magicians, do some pretty dumb things. Oh, God can do lice, so can we. I mean, that was pretty dumb, you know. You can bring up frogs, well, so can we.
We can
I
turn things
mean,
into blood.
I think again, I think if we just expand our box a little bit, we might be able to think of a way that these could fit in perfectly. Now, again, we can't test our theories until it happens, and that's the trouble, right? But I think when you start looking at what these things look like, that I don't think they're, I don't, I mean, one of the things that they will do is certainly torment people, no question about that. But as to exactly why, I think that's a harder question to answer. Like, what is the purpose of the torment? I don't know. But notice there that men will seek death in those days and they will not find it. They'll desire to die and death will flee from them. I kind of think of the Simon and Garfunkel song, There Must Be 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. I feel like there must be 50 ways to end your life. Not that we would ever recommend that. But, unfortunately, people are killed and people take their own lives rather successfully, which is very tragic. But here, something fundamentally different is going to be taking place. And I get the impression that they've already taken the mark. And this is where my whole genetic engineering thing comes in. And this is what I talk about in Corrupting Image 1, 2, and 3, that they are they've been transformed, they've become immortal, and now, for whatever reason, these creatures are stinging them, and it's pretty lousy, and they'd rather die. But I would also tie it together with Revelation 14, or excuse me, 16, where it talks about those that have taken the mark, and that they will. Let's see here. Let me just go ahead and read this. It says, so the first went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and a foul and loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. So I talk about this in Corrupting Image 3, that there is a really nasty disease that you can get, that it basically eats at your flesh, and you can see bones and stuff, and it's pretty nasty. And I get the impression, based on the language, that that is what is going on, that these guys that have taken the mark, they did so because they thought they're going to be able to become immortal. They would, have all these amazing benefits, but in the end, it starts to turn on them. And instead of it being the elixir to eternal life, it becomes this terrible curse that they cannot get rid of. Even death will not save them from this. So it could be that the stinging is in some way inflicted upon those who are trying to jump ship. Maybe they've taken the mark, but now they regret it. And so maybe they're the ones getting stung. We know that it definitely won't sting people that have the seal of God on their foreheads, but as far as who else is stung beyond that,
It says everybody. I
I
mean,
think
again,
that's a little bit
I've
of a
looked at
question.
this, and it says everybody. But to your point, and this is, I believe, I probably read it, heard it first from you. Something's going on here that people cannot kill themselves, if even if they
Right.
want to. So this torment is so
Yeah.
bad that they want to die, and so that's where I still align and lean in that direction, that they bought into the in the oldest lie. You can be as gods. You can be immortal. You can be as Elohim.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I believe
Yeah.
that's part of this. Uh,
Yeah.
is perhaps they have taken the mark, but I mean, again, the text does not say that. The text only says it torments all who do
No.
not have the seal of God.
Well, it
So
doesn't say all. It says they were commanded not to harm the grass or the earth or any green thing, but only those who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. All
yeah,
right,
only those
so
men.
there's
So that's
yeah, but it
pretty much
doesn't mean everybody that doesn't. Well, correct me if I'm wrong here, counselor, but my understanding of logic is that there's two groups here, A and B. So they can't sting people in group A. They can sting people in group B, but it
oh,
doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to sting everyone in group B.
well,
Is
but
that
my point is,
Am I
it
wrong?
says only those men who do not have the seal of God. So it's going to, the way I read
Right.
that is, it's not just if you took the mark or not. You could have been Bear Grylls living off grid, but not have the seal of God. He's a man. He doesn't have the
Yeah.
seal of God. I don't know anything about Bear Grylls. I'm just, people know who
So
that
he's
is.
he's eligible for stinging. That would make him
Definitely.
eligible for stinging, right? So, but these are necessary conditions and sufficient conditions, right?
Hmm.
So a necessary condition is that they don't have the mark of God. But is that a sufficient condition to mean that they will get stung? And that's where I would say no, I don't think so. There could be something that we just don't know, and that's where I think if we string together a few other texts, we might at least be able to come up with a decent a guesstimate, right?
I mean,
So
I would hope for people that haven't
yeah,
taken the mark and perhaps they just haven't, come into covenant yet, placed their faith in Yeshua. Uh, I would hope that for their sake that they would not face this torment for 5 months. Uh, but
sure,
again,
yeah,
that's
it's
one of
yeah.
those that I would like for your that for your interpretation just then to be correct for those individuals. So it's
It's
better just to
interesting,
have
and this
better
is
to have the seal.
yeah, better just to sign up with God, right? Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. So
yeah, yeah.
let's say, so like the shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name is in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek his name is Apollyon.
Hmm.
So take it away because I
Yeah.
know you want to show your picture.
Here, here's my picture. Here it is. I gotta show it. Oops. Okay. Whoops. Darn it. Okay. There we go. All right. So there it is. Um, yeah. Well, and this is the thing, because I tell you, I was teaching through Revelation some years ago, and I kept looking at these. I'm like, man, they sound similar, but then they seem different. And so I kept looking and looking, and I came across something called a manticore, which was a Persian mythological beast that had a lion's body, and then it had like a lion's head, but then a man's face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like 85% match, right? And then I kept digging, and I came across this thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is 100%. So I'm going to keep reading here because it says, then the sixth angel sounded. I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth trumpet, release the four angels who are at the river. And so let me skip past that. Now, the number of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. And I saw the horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, sulfur yellow, and the heads of their horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these three plagues, a third of mankind died. Pretty awful. For their powers in their mouth and in their tails, and their tails are like serpents having heads, and with them they do harm. So I kept looking at this, and I'm like, gosh, they're both horse-like creatures. What if I superimpose the fifth trumpet and the sixth trumpet? All right. And so when you do that, what you get is you have, well, basically this creature. This is what comes up. This is a representation of Nergal. Nergal, also known as Pabilsag. It's lots of different names here, but this is essentially the god of the underworld. And again, there's so many different names. Basically, well, for Satan or for Enlil, I mean, he has lots of different names, but it's kind of the same dude. But notice here, you have the scorpion's tail, you have a horse-like body, you have eagle's talons on the back, you have horse's hooves on the front, you have wings, you have a man's head, and you can see the mitre or the crown. That was an old style crown. We often think of a crown like the King of England's
King Jimmy.
crown, where it's kind of pointy. It's got like lots of different little points. But yeah, but this was a just a different shaped crown. It was just like a really ornate hat. Okay, and then the little thing right here. I don't know if you guys can see my pointer. You probably can't, but right behind his head looks like a big gigantic ear. That's actually a lion's head. And so you have a lion's head and a man's head. He's holding a crown. Obviously, this is a type of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the Greek version of Pabilsag, aka Nergal, aka Enlil, aka Satan. And the Sagittarius is the more polite version. Okay. Now, what you don't see in this picture, I do have it in other pictures, but I won't grab those. But there's a serpent-headed phallus. All right, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But I'm like, okay, but why does it say tail instead of phallus? All right, so I did a little digging, and I discovered that in ancient languages, the phallus is often just called a tail. I was like, oh, okay. Well, there you go. Okay, so you have it's got a serpent-headed phallus, right? And it's got a scorpion's tail. It's got wings. It has a man's head. It's got a lion's head. It has the wings. It's got the claws of an eagle. I was like, oh my gosh, this seems totally like what we're talking about. So this right here is from about 3000 BC. I have other, well, I've shown them on the show. If you guys have been watching, you've seen on the show. But there's one on a Kuduru stone, which is from 1200 BC. That is a stone they would put under the lintel of a door, and then every time you stepped across it, you were basically invoking this, or you were either invoking the god or kind of saying, please stay away from my house because I've been really nice and I paid my dues and all that stuff. And it was kind of for this divine protection, not from the Most High God, but from these other lesser gods, these gods of death. So this is how they imagined. And what I find really interesting is that John describes the same being that the ancient spiritual masters, pagan spiritual masters, were seeing back in the day. And what I would suggest is that they really did have a connection with the underworld. They had a connection with the other side, with demonic spirits, and that they could see into that. And whether they used ayahuasca, I don't know. I don't know how exactly they got on these trips, but hey, opium's been around for a long time, and that's another way to get there. But they were communicating with the gods of the other side. And so I think that they were faithfully representing what they did see. And then John is confirming that what they saw is what is going to come out of the abyss. Now, the abyss would simply be the gateway of the underworld, the undercity. When you compare this with Ezekiel chapter 28, and it talks about the king of the city, which is Melkart or Melek-Karat, that was another epithet for Satan or Nimrod or Marduk. Again, lots of different names. I won't get into all that. If you want to check it out, go look at Corrupting the Image Volume 2, because I put a lot of work into this one. I did way too much research, but it's interesting to see how all these names come together. And so this was just an amazing chapter, because I was like, oh my goodness, they're describing, or John is describing, these same kinds of creatures that were known as Nergal. Now, another interesting facet is that the first century Jewish apocalyptists, they believed that the gates of Hades were going to fling wide open at any moment, and that hordes of these basic demon bugs were going to come out shooting their arrows. And I think that is why Jesus took his disciples to Caesarea Philippi. They went and visited the gates of Hades. And I think that's when Jesus said the gates of Hades, aka the gates of hell, but the gates of Hades will not prevail against his ecclesia, against his body. Okay. And then, of course, he takes them on top of that mountain, Mount Hermon, which is where the 200 angels came down in the days of Jared, days of Noah. And that is where they formed a pact. And they took an oath, they took an imprecation. And the very name of the mountain, which is Hermon, it's been named that for as long as we can remember. Right. So you find that first in the book of Deuteronomy, of course, the book of Joshua. It talks about Mount Hermon. And of course, they were fighting against King Og of Bashan. They were, and Og of Bashan, incidentally, he is mentioned in the Ugaritic writings. They talked about the god or the king of the dead, whose name was Ug. And you're like, that's interesting. All right. And so I show in the book that Ug and Og are phonetically one and the same. And Ug comes from the name Enlil. I know it doesn't sound like it, but if you take a look at the logogram that represents Enlil, then the name of this god of the underworld, his name was Ug, which was death and enmity. And then if you duplicate that or you reduplicate it, you get the term Gug, which comes into the Hebrew as Gog. So you see death all around. I mean, it was all about the God of death. And in Hebrews chapter 2:14, it talks about how Jesus had to die to become like his brethren, and he had to defeat the God of death, namely Satan, who had power over us and that threat of death. And so Jesus nullified that. So I see this incredible this episode, this unfolding drama of where Jesus goes to the base of Mount Hermon. He goes to the gates of Hades. He says, "Not today, boys." And I think Satan had something planned. I think Satan was well aware who Jesus was, because Satan kept getting his butt kicked. Remember when they go across the Sea of Galilee and they're going over to Gadara, and guess who's waiting for him? Well, you have this demoniac who's got legion. But before they even get there, there's this huge storm that comes up out of nowhere. Now, remember, these were very experienced fishermen. This was not their first time in a boat, right? They knew what to do. And they're all freaking out. They're like, "Oh my gosh," or "Oh my God," right? "We're gonna die." They're like, "Oh my God, wake up," right? And not quite realizing who exactly Jesus was, but they were getting the idea. And what does he do? He rebukes the wind and the waves. I don't think the normal wind and the normal waves are moral agents, but in this case, I think what was happening is that Satan was using his power, just like he could cause the house of Job's kids to fall in on itself. He could cause fire to come down from heaven and other things. Here he was, in Job's case, he was using that power to destroy Job's kids, etc., and his sheep and all that stuff. And I think when Jesus was crossing over the Sea of Galilee, that Satan was the one who was responsible for causing that storm to come up out of nowhere. So Jesus rebukes it, and then they land at Gadara, and the demoniac comes up and says, "Hey, what have we to do with you, Jesus? Have you come to torment us before the time?" And he says, "What's your name?" "We're legion, because we're many." "All right, come out of him and go into those pigs." So that's the short story. But this whole area was known as the land of Bashan, Og of Bashan, land of the snake dragon. So this had been taken over by demons in a big way since the days of Noah, essentially. And this was their headquarters. And I think that's what's so interesting, is that Jesus didn't spend most of his time in Jerusalem. He went to the land of the house of Israel. And you bring this up a lot, Scott, when we talk about Isaiah chapter 8, because Isaiah chapter 8 says, talks about those who says, to the law and the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, is because there's no light in them. They will pass through it and be hard pressed and hungry, etc. Says it. And then they will look to the earth and see, and trouble and darkness and gloom of anguish, and they will be driven into darkness. And then we have this amazing passage that was quoted in the book of Matthew. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed, as when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, and the land, in the Gentile, in Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Right? So they were in darkness. This whole area truly was in darkness. And now here comes Jesus, the light of the world. I think if we could have put on our spiritual glasses, and we could have seen our night vision glasses, if we could have put on our spiritual vision glasses and been able to see into the other realm, I think we would have seen this gigantic aura coming off Jesus, just like the one that he had on top of the mountain. And I think that's when he basically he turned down the transparency filter and he said, I'm just gonna let my light shine. Okay. But I think most of the time he had the knob turned down to like 1, and you couldn't see it. But I think the demonic realm, and of course the angelic realm, I think they could see that perfectly fine. And I think they were freaking out. It says, those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. You have multiplied the nation and increased its joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy of the harvest. For you have broken the yoke of the burden, etc. And then he says, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Right? So that whole thing is the setup. Jesus was establishing his headquarters there in Capernaum because he was going to directly attack. He was going on the offense. He was going on the offense against Satan. And he was telling him, your days are numbered. And I think that's when Satan started to freak out, and more.
Well, I interviewed Dina Dye last night on her new book, The Greatest Exodus, and one of the connections was, you go back to Genesis 1 and you see the chaos of the waters and everything, and you see God bringing order out of it. And then you see it with the flood. You see it with when Israel leaves Egypt and the waters are parted. They are tamed. They are, at his command, they part and Israel walks through. Here, you got to be similar. There's a crossing, and Yeshua shows, look who I am. I have authority over the chaos. I have authority over the storms. I have authority over these things, these natural disasters, these natural storms, natural floodings. I'm the one that has authority over them. I might let Satan play his little games, but the buck stops here. And so he's demonstrating that to the disciples as they go into enemy territory to sort of reclaim this, because the house of Israel, I mean, we talk about this all the time. You look at history, and they never had a good king. I mean, ever since the kingdom split, Jeroboam went off the rails. He was the first Roman Catholic pope before Rome was even a thing. He was.
Yeah. Right. I hear you. I'm with you. Well, and this is why understanding the distinction between the two houses becomes so significant. Because if we're going to really understand the fullness of the Gospels, we have to understand the basic mission, which was to call back the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? Jesus explicitly says that. I came not except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And that's why he spends the majority of his time in the land of Galilee, because that's where the house of Israel was headquartered. And that is where Satan had this massive beachhead, right? He goes to Satan's headquarters, right? This is basically special ops walking into into the Kremlin. Okay. And it's like, hey, we're going to rumble. And this is where I think it gets really interesting, because why did Jesus go to the top of Mount Hermon with only 3 of his disciples? Why does he have this spectacular light show? Why does he have Moses and Elijah show up and they talk about his exodus? And then on the way down, he tells the disciples, now don't tell anybody until after the Son of Man is risen. And they're just scratching their heads like, what are you talking about? I mean, this is such an incredible thing. Why not tell all the disciples? Why not tell everybody? Like, this is going to be amazing proof of who Jesus is. My theory is that it wasn't for the disciples. They were there as witnesses, but it was really a kind of a false flag, if you will, for the enemy. This was a diversion. This was to say, hey guys, guess what? I'm coming back. And you think it's today, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm really doing. Because also when we go to Psalm 68 is powerful. And, you know, it's one of these things that you study the Bible forever, and then one day it just starts to click. And you're like, oh, that's really cool. Right? So he says in Psalm 68, verse 15, a mountain of God is the mountain of Bashan. So Hermon and Bashan are the same exact mountain. They are the same thing. It says a mountain of many peaks is the mountain of Bashan. Why do you fiend with envy, you mountains of many peaks? This is the mountain which God desires to dwell in. Yes, the Lord will dwell in it forever. Now, there's some debate whether that's referring to Zion or if that's referring to Bashan. But nevertheless, you know, God's basically taken this back. It says the chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands and thousands. The Lord is among them as in Sinai in the holy place. You have ascended on high. You have led captivity captive. You receive gifts even among men, even from the rebellious, that the Lord God might dwell there. So I think Satan was kind of peeing his pants right here, because Jesus goes on top of the mountain, on top of his mountain, mind you, of Satan's mountain, the mountain of the imprecation, the mountain of the vow or the curse, where the 200 initially came down. And they, of course, did the whole Nephilim thing, Genesis 6, which all went down the drain. And now here comes Jesus, the anointed one, the Messiah. He is the seed of the woman. This is the one that Satan has been worried about since the garden. He knew somebody was going to come and was going to crush him. And so he's looking for any angle he can get. And what those Jewish apocalyptists thought in the first century, I think that could have happened, but I think Jesus put the kibosh on it. He said the gates of hell shall not prevail. The gates of Hades shall not prevail. And it all took place right there in that spot. And of course, you know, the tribe of Dan was just down the street from this place, right? So this is all in the same general area, all this nonsense and pagan worship that was going on. Lots and lots of bad stuff. This was also the grotto of Pan. A lot of bad stuff was happening here. So all of this to say that the things that Satan wanted to release, I think were going to happen right here. And those 200 that came down in the days of Noah, I think he wants to basically let those guys out. I think those are, I don't know if I'd call them buddies, but they're on his team. Okay. They're all on the bad team. Okay. They're the bad guys. And I think Satan is going to try to muster as many allies as he can. We know what the express purpose is going to be in the tribulation. It says that they're going to gather everybody for the battle of the great day of the Lord. And this is where I think this incredible deception happens. Paul calls it the strong delusion. So remember we talked about the gate or the covenant of death that is going to be established. It's specifically in Isaiah 26. What are you scornful men who rule this people in Jerusalem? For you say we've made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we are in agreement. That's where I also pointed us to Revelation chapter 6, the fourth horseman, death and Hades, or Sheol, they're the same thing. Sheol, Hades, the abyss, the underworld, the city, as it was called in ancient Near Eastern documents. It's all talking about that realm of the dead, specifically demonic bad angel spirits. Okay. And these are the reinforcements that I think Satan wants to let out. So if we go back to our text there in Revelation chapter 9, what we see is it says, so you have this king of the abyss. I believe that is Satan. And his name is Abaddon. He's the destroyer. That's what Abaddon means, is the destroyer. That's the same thing as Apollyon, the destroyer. And it says, saying to the sixth angel of the trumpet, release the 4 angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates. Well, we have the Euphrates mentioned again in Revelation chapter 16, where the Euphrates river, or excuse me, in chapter 16. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but Revelation 16, where you have the beginning of Armageddon. Okay, so let's see here. Then Revelation 16:12. Then the angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. So I think these are one and the same thing, just different camera angles. Then I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. They are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. So there again, I think the whole world is going to know that they're trying to fight against the God of the Bible. Now, the strong delusion is in thinking that they can win. Okay. And I think the lie is going to go something like this. Yes, the God of the Bible is very powerful, no doubt about that. And he had his hand in the creation of this world. Yes, that's all true. However, he's really a big jerk. And I'm here to help you overcome. Let's face it. Yeah, he's powerful, but he's evolved. He's an evolved, advanced alien race. And you too can evolve and become a god. And I think this is where Satan slips in his DNA to the beast, and then the beast markets that, gives it to the whole world. At first, it's like, hey, take it because it's going to be wonderful. Then the next thing is take it or you can't buy anything. And then the next one is take it or you're going to die. And the delusion is people thinking, hey, we've got to arm ourselves against the God of the 2 witnesses because we know that they were powerful. And so we all have to do our part. We have to take up arms in the form of spiritual armory, and by upgrading ourselves, taking on this mark and becoming something more than we are today, so that we can become this incredible united army against Jesus and his army. And again, whether they call him Jesus or they call him something else, they think that he's powerful. They think he's real, but they don't think that he's all powerful, and they don't think he's good either. Everything has been flipped. The script has been flipped. And so that's the deception as I see it.
This creator God who wants to control us, and they won't let us have sex, with whoever we want to. And, he won't even let us eat bacon and shellfish, that meanie. We should be able to do whatever.
Exactly. Right.
We need to be our own gods. I mean, he expects us to rest every 7th day. The nerve of that God. We want to do what we want to do in this. The do as thou wilt.
Right.
The Aleister Crowley.
And you might say, how could this ever happen? But it already happened with Marcion, right? I mean, basically the whole church, for the most part, fell into this. They fell into this Marcionistic understanding of the Bible. And they thought that the God of the Old Testament was a demiurge. He was the one that foisted the law on the backs of the Jews. And then Jesus came and saved us and freed us from that terrible system. Now, it's spun a little differently today. I mean, I don't know any Christian that would suggest that the God of the Old Testament is different than the God of the New Testament. However, they would suggest that that same God turned over a new leaf. He turned over a new leaf big time, and he just doesn't act that way anymore. That was a different dispensation. That was a dispensation of law. Now we're in the dispensation of
They
grace.
try to say that we are new covenant Christians. And again, the ignorance there, and I
Mm-hmm.
just listened. I couldn't listen for more than 10 or 15 minutes, but our friend Rob Solberg put out another 4 myths in Hebrew roots. And I've only heard the first one, but Doug, this is what was sad because we had Melissa on the other day, and we'll have to do maybe a follow up to this because I think it would be good for some back and forth. The first myth is in First John chapter 3, where sin is the violation of the commandments. That apparently is a myth amongst Hebrew roots, Messianics, Torah pursuant, Torah trying, whatever you want to call it. That is actually a myth to believe what John wrote. Now, what John should have written, according, Rob was even gracious enough to say, now, I really wish he had written, what those commandments are. What are those commandments
Uh-huh.
as new
Yeah.
covenant believers? What? Because again, his Jesus changes. His Jesus is not the same
Mm-hmm.
today as he was yesterday and as he'll be tomorrow.
Yep.
So, but when you don't study the prophets, when you don't pay attention to the prophets because you think we're already in the kingdom, then you can in your mind justify that all has been fulfilled. I mean, didn't
Yeah.
Yeshua reveal everything about scripture pointed to him on the road to Emmaus?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, as far as his first coming, why he had to die as the suffering, and why he had to come to serve as the servant, as the kinsman
Yep.
redeemer, as the Lamb of God, why he took on those roles and fulfilled those roles. What he's yet to do is fulfill the role as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Judge of the world. He has not
Yeah.
come back in judgment. He is not. I believe Yeshua is definitely on the throne at the right hand, and I'm air quoting that because I believe that's metaphorical language from the ancient Near East as far as being at the right hand. I don't think he's sitting next to an old guy on a beard, but he is enthroned. He is in the
Yes.
heavens, in the heavenlies. He is the king of the universe. But right now, we've got a little potentate running around, running our country, and you've got this guy over in Russia running his country, and a lot of people aren't happy with what Netanyahu is doing with Israel, and a lot of people, aren't. You've got a lot of different little head puppets that are sort of semi-sovereign over their various kingdoms and fiefdoms. I mean, it's not like it was 400 or 500 years ago when you had true kings, but people, it's absolutely, it's insane. And again, if he wants to be least in the kingdom, he's doing a good job because not only is he practicing, he's teaching it. So, and I think that's even more important as we're going through Revelation. We're not seeing a God that changes. We're going to get here real soon, probably in the next week or
Right.
two, to
Right.
those who have the testimony of Jesus and keep the commandments. And again, you just pointed out he's not making up new stuff. He's snippet quoting Isaiah 8.
Right.
But if you ignore
Yeah.
that part of Isaiah,
Yeah.
you just focus on how Jesus came to be a light to the nations. Okay, what was he shining? What was his light? What was Israel supposed to be? A light to the nations. They were supposed to take his perfect rules and precepts and judgments. And so people would learn, what nation has a God like this that gives us these good laws? So anyway.
And I've been thinking a lot about, I've been focused on the love of God a lot. And I've been thinking about Revelation. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how do you marry these two? It seems incongruent. And when I was a pre-tribber, I just kept hearing that, the book of Revelation is about God pouring out his wrath upon a Christ rejecting world. And we were giddy about this. We were so excited that God was finally going to let him have it, And of course, this maybe ties into to John's question. I know this is tongue in cheek. Are these locusts literal or do they represent Democrats? Just curious. Yeah, well, I think they're literal. I don't think they're Democrats.
They're Democrats, Doug.
We won't go. We won't go down. We won't go down that path. But what I think is happening here is I think God is trying to save us from ourselves. Basically,
Here it is.
there's this tendency to to right. And they did not repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual morality or their thefts. Right?
Yeah.
God is trying to save us from ourselves, but because God, the God of the Bible, has been spun by some, has been mistaught by others, has been twisted by Marcion. You pick your poison there. The
That's
God
it.
of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a bad God. I mean, how many of our, I mean, when I was in Calvary Chapel, I heard this, like the God of the Old Testament. Well, he was kind of just a bit different. He was a lot more judgmental. He was the God of wrath, but now Jesus, now we're under the new covenant, right? So why would you want to go back to the old covenant? As if the God of the Old Testament was some ogre that you had to stay away from. And it
Oh,
was just, it's
but
ridiculous. But
and again, it's I'm learning that when you're having this discussion with someone who believes that Jesus is different today and that God changes, they love to focus on the
mhm,
older covenant because it is older than what Yeshua, but the terms are not changed. The marital vows are
right,
the same. And when you understand
right.
this as a marriage covenant, not as a set of laws, the Torah is part of the marriage vows. It's a new, it doesn't matter if it's a renewed covenant or a brand new covenant because it's the same Torah. And that's where
Yeah,
I don't know that
exactly.
Rob would ever want to
Yeah.
do another discussion debate with Melissa or me. I personally want to have a discussion with Rob on how our eschatology or lack thereof affects our theology and our hermeneutics. In other words, I
Mm,
believe if you're going to throw out Isaiah 8 as being applicable to today, if you're going to throw out Isaiah 11, where all of Israel and Ephraim and Judah are gathered back, and you no longer see this envy, jealousy, this vexing that you still see between Judah and Christianity, that you still see between the two houses. If you're going to throw out Ezekiel 37 and claim that that has been fulfilled, I'm sorry, Joseph and Judah are
mm.
still at each other's throats for now. I mean, even after
Big
people
time.
come into covenant, quite often within Messianic Judaism, they treat us as lesser than. When I say us that don't claim to be of Judah, we're treated as lesser than citizens within Messianic
Mhm.
Judaism. So again, there's still not this,
Right.
oh, well, we'll let you be. It's sort of like Ron on Truth Unedited that teaches that only certain African tribes are Israel. So when he talks about Israel, he's not talking about a European or an Asian or an Arab or a Jew or someone from he's not talking about the Semites, not the Semites. He's not talking about Aryans from the region of Turkey and Iran. He's not talking about the Persians. He's only talking about a very, very specific, narrow group, much like Christianity is taught incorrectly that when they
Mhm.
hear the term Israel, you're talking about the Jews. I mean, because we're
Mhm.
we're the Gentile church. I mean, we're the new
That's right.
Gentile church, and we're in the
That's right.
church age. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the ecclesia age is not new.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
expanded. Hey,
And
let me
this
ask you
is
a
again
question.
where I would invite everyone to. Well, I'd invite everyone to check out my new book,
Yeah.
God's Divorce. Right. So and I wrote this. I wrote this not so much for our group, but I wrote it for the average Christian. That was my target demographic that I was trying to go for because I wanted to put it in such a way that it just makes sense. And that's been the feedback that I've been getting is they're like, it just makes sense. Like, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Right.
You
And
wrote it as
and
philosophy.
so, if you have friends or family out there that don't understand why are you messianic? Why are you trying to become Jewish? You're like, okay, here, check out this book because I kept it simple. I kept the language easy. I didn't use fancy terms. I just tried to put it in a simple love story framework. And once you see it, man, it's hard to unsee it, and I think people are going to start seeing this. And I get like emails and people just telling me all the time, like, yeah, I'm starting to see the Sabbath. I mean, God bless him, Charlie Kirk, he had a book coming out about the Sabbath. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Somebody who's so mainstream was starting to observe the Sabbath. That's pretty awesome. So I think God is working. As much as there's darkness creeping in all around us, there's also light. And that people are beginning to see the Sabbath, they're beginning to understand their role in in Israel. Even things like calendar wars. I mean, I kind of loathe calendar wars, Frank, but here's the flip side. That also means that there are people that are now coming into this and they're asking questions, and they have a desire, a zeal to really keep the Bible as God has intended for us. So that's at least the flip side of calendar wars.
That's a good segue into this question. It's wild how many Christians are having rapture dreams and visions. Got to wonder where these messages are coming from. I believe personally those that have been fed and I'll just call it a lie of a rapture of the church, of the Christian church, prior to a 7-year tribulation period. Nothing I said right then was biblical. I mean, there's not a Gentile Christian church. There's nowhere in Scripture is there ever a 7-year. There's a Daniel 70th week. Doug and I differ on that. There's going to be a final 7 years of this age. I mean, we
Sure.
can all agree on that. But here's the good news. Here's the good news. These individuals that are predicting the rapture of the Gentile Christian church, and that the Great Tribulation will start on September the 22nd or the 23rd or the 24th. The good news is they're actually learning about Yom Teruah. They're learning about the Feast of Trumpets and why that is significant. So, hold on, what did I do? Okay. So they're learning at least about his appointed times versus this imminence doctrine that Jesus could come back and rapture his church and his bride any day of the week, Christmas, Halloween. It could happen tomorrow morning, Doug, at 11:17 a.m. or p.m. I mean, it just any moment now, the rapture could happen. So the good news, even within our dispensational brothers who still would think that they're Jewish feasts, or as Rob Silber calls them, Torah feast. He calls them Torah feast. That's a new one to me. So he's using a more biblical term. They are what they are. They're Yeshua's feast. They're God's feast.
Yeah.
So don't call them
Torah feast still sounds pejorative, frankly.
Yes. It's meant to sound pejorative. Yeah. It's meant to put a label and put people in a box that they're old. They're trying to be old covenant Christians. I'm trying to be whether it's new or renewed covenant, an Israelite, understanding that your citizenship is in Israel. You cease being a pagan. And so let's see, you'll like this one. The key question: Are the cast down? Are they cast down and then 4 angels loosened with their army? Are they unified? And so, Doug, I think from talking to you in the past and from tonight a little bit, you believe that these 5th trumpet locusts and the 6th, the ones that the images, these entities in the 6th trumpet, they're really one and the same. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
see distinctions. I didn't make a list. The 5th trumpet, they only harm men. Now maybe it doesn't say they just disappear off the face of the earth and they go back in their little locust hole. So maybe then they could morph. Maybe they could then develop or be given new phallic serpent head tails, because the entities in the 6th trumpet, they can kill. They will kill a third of men at that time. So if at that time you have 6 billion people on Earth, there's going to be 4 billion when they finish their service. And so that's the distinctions I see. There's distinctions within the descriptions, but the biggest one I see is this 5-month period that I parallel back to the Torah. And when you had the judgment, the timing of the flood, you had 5 months, 150 days,
Yep.
And so that's where I'm
Yep.
seeing a parallel back
Yep.
to the Torah.
Yep.
And again, maybe they morph, maybe they grow a serpent
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Alice thing
Right.
that you
Yeah.
know, but there is a
Maybe it's
distinct
kind of like, well, I kind of think of like the alien movies or zombie movies where, if you get bitten by this thing, then
you
something
become
happens
one.
to you become the host, but maybe also something happens to the thing that bites you. And whatever these stings and their tails are, we don't know. They're going to really suck. We know that. They're going to hurt like mad. But, and again, this is where I was just pointing out that it doesn't mean that everybody who doesn't have the mark of God necessarily is going to be stung, right? I mean, I think that's a possibility, but I don't think it's a necessary condition or a sufficient condition. So obviously these things are really scary. And then we see that they're going to release the 4 angels who are bound at the river Euphrates. I think these are probably Satan's 4 top generals. That's my hunch. I think they are the same kings of the east that we see in Revelation 16 when the Euphrates River is dried up. So I just see this convergence of all these things coming together, and I would generally, I would agree that this is probably happening toward the end of the Great Tribulation, the 3.5 years. So this is roughly 5, maybe 6, 7 months before the return of Christ. I'm not going to put an exact number on it, but we're probably in that last year before Christ comes back, and this is happening in that time frame. Because I think what's happening is that Satan is trying to muster everybody. He's getting the people that have the mark of the beast. He's getting his 200 million super duper guys from the underworld. He needs to pull out every gun he has to fight against Jesus. He knows it's going to be a radical battle. But I think he's got to try to tip the scales. If he is outnumbered by there's more angels than his bad angels, I think he's got to find reinforcements. And I think that's what he's trying to do. And I think when people take the mark, they become this hybrid being and they do get superpowers. And that's what I think is really scary, is that they're going to have these superpowers. They're going to be like the beast. Remember that the whole world says, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? Look, you had the 2 witnesses were causing havoc. They were raining terror on the earth. Nobody could stop them. They could call fire from heaven. The world was panicking. And then finally, the beast that comes out of the abyss, he's able to overcome them and kill them. And the world rejoices, and then they rise again. And so the world's freaking out again. And I think it's that fear, this intense panic, this anxiety of what is coming, that this is now going to be the impetus that the world needs to get on board and take the mark of the beast. It's not just so you can check out faster at Walmart. That one always cracks me up. The barcode. I mean, I used to believe that. Okay, so I'm laughing at myself. Yeah, I remember back in like
Hey,
1990 or something.
here's
Uh,
this is
yeah.
a good segue into that. Could it be as simple as you can't buy or sell without the mark? You will starve to death, lose your home, lifestyle. Does any giftings need to be attached to the mark? And again, I would say this simplicity here, not necessarily a barcode, but with what we see technologically, and I believe China has sort of been the test case for the future global control social credit scoring system. Okay,
Mm,
you're not pledging your allegiance to this beast government. You're not on our team. They're going to be able to prevent you from engaging in commerce. Even if you own your land, you can, at
mhm.
least in America, you don't really own it. You do,
Yeah.
but you have to pay property taxes. You have to pay property taxes on your
Yep.
vehicle in Alabama. To be able to own a vehicle, you have to pay a tax on it. And so, about the only way possibly, you know, to have this done is if you had a friend or family member after warning them, no, don't do this. You know, oh, you've already done it now. Pay my property taxes for it, because you're not going to be able to do it. I mean, when money gets
Yeah.
digitized and they can say, All right, you have used too much math. Not math, gas. You're not allowed to travel. No, you're not allowed to have any more meat. You've had your meat. It's going to be very easy to track this because again, that's
Hmm.
part of what we've seen growing. They
Yeah.
can track their
Yeah.
inventory and they'll be able
Yep.
to track easily what Doug and I mean, we're already on the hit list, Doug, if you looked at our algorithm. I mean, we're not going to be hiding anywhere if this
Yeah.
happens and unfolds over
Yeah.
the next year or two. We are going to, it's not like we're famous, but the algorithm doesn't care if you're famous. The
No.
algorithm will go, oh, that guy is preaching Yeshua. That guy
Yeah.
is, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You're not.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not like they don't already own all our data anyway.
Yeah. They already own it. Yeah. I see. I think what's going to happen is the two witnesses rise, the world freaks out, and there's at first it's going to be a pep talk. Hey guys, we all got to come together. This is our moment. And so it's volitional. And shortly thereafter, it becomes mandatory. You have to do this. And then sometime thereafter, if you still haven't signed up after, I don't know, 60 days, 90 days, or whatever, well, now you're a threat to humanity. You are clearly on the side of the enemy and you're a traitor to the entire human race. You're dangerous. We can't trust you. We don't want to have you stab us in the back. We better take you out. And so that's how I see it coming down. So, it's I think when you take it off charts and you take it off tables and graphs and you kind of try to movify this, you make it into a movie. You're suddenly like, oh, what if like this? Like again, it's speculation, but at least kind of gives it some gravitas. It put some skin on this skeleton that we've been talking about. And I think when we just look back in human history, we see that oppression doesn't usually start day one, right? First, like go back to Nazi Germany. I mean, that's just a classic case, right? You first had the Nuremberg laws, and people kind of got used to those, and then more rights were taken away from Jews, and then even more rights, and then they had to wear a patch, and then they were put into the ghettos, and then finally to the camps, right? It's not like Hitler came in day one and then day two they marched them off to the gas chambers. Not at all, right? I mean, it was relatively fast, but in the grand scheme of things, it was kind of slow, where they were easing people into these new measures. And I think that's what's going to be happening. And you're going to definitely turn in your neighbor. If you think the two witnesses were bad guys, and here's a guy that doesn't want to get the mark, he doesn't want to stand united with humanity against this evil alien overlord, namely God, who's coming to destroy our way of life, man, that's going to be lousy. Now, I started talking about love, and I kind of want to continue on that thread, because if you look at this from God's perspective, God is trying to get us out of this pit of darkness that we're stuck in. It's kind of like when Morpheus offered the red pill to Neo, right? He's like, hey, you're stuck in prison. You just don't realize it. And that's the unfortunate part, is that most of the world doesn't realize the darkness that they're stuck in. They think this is as good as it's going to get. This is all there is. And God lovingly wants to take back his planet. He wants to take back the reign that he rightfully has, and to live with us, to walk with us, to talk with us, to commune with us, right? He's got something so much better. And Revelation is just that final chapter of where humanity, and of course led by Satan, doesn't want to let go of this. And of course Satan knows what's going on, but it's humanity that is in this strong delusion to believe the lie, because they would not believe the truth. And what I think the truth that Paul was referring to, or at least he himself didn't know 100%, but he had this sense by the Holy Spirit that the truth was what the two witnesses will be prophesying, or will be saying during this time, is that, hey, the king is coming. This is the time to repent. This is the time to come back to him. Let go of death. Let go of this kingdom of darkness. And the world by and large says, no way, Jose, we kind of like it this way, and we're going to fight. And, and then you just insert Avengers movie, whatever, where
Endgame.
mean space aliens come and they're trying to take over, and we're going to unite against all these bad guys and we're going to save the planet. I mean, I think that's kind of what it's going to be, for lack of
Yeah,
a better
yeah.
word. And
Tony
wouldn't it be
Stark and
amazing if we could all be superheroes, right? Yeah, you can all be
yeah,
Tony Stark. You just got to take this,
Captain
or Captain
America.
America. Here, just
Yeah,
take this
Hulk.
DNA and you'll be upgraded in the most ultimate way that you can imagine. We'll have a planet Earth full of Avengers. Wow, that would be
Thor.
pretty amazing, right?
You got Thor. You got these gods
All
from
right.
other planets that come down to
Yeah.
fight. So, will the demonic locusts
Yeah.
arrive before or after the second coming of Messiah Yeshua HaMashiach? I personally believe that these events are unfolding before the resurrection. That's the, and when I'm using that term resurrection specifically as opposed to the coming, because again, his second coming is it's going to be much longer than his first coming. His first coming, we know it was 30-ish years, 31, 32, 33. Scholars debate on that.
Hmm.
The second coming, I believe it's going to be 1,000 years. And so, but I do believe this event is happening prior
Yeah.
to during this age, not during the next age. So it would be prior to at the conclusion of this
Yeah. I
6
mean,
day.
I think what Kevin is asking is, yeah, yeah.
But I
Let's say
can
before
see
his
how,
arrival, right? Maybe that's the
yeah.
way to put it, right? I think that's what,
Well, it'd be
yeah.
like the
I think
resurrection.
that's what Kevin's getting at.
Yeah,
I would definitely
we
agree
can,
that. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I'm not disputing it. Yeah, I mean, well, it's an interesting question, Kevin. I mean, by these events or the locusts, I think the locusts definitely arrive before the second coming of Christ, and I think they're going to be around when he comes back. In fact, I think that Satan is going to use them to try to keep Jesus from touching down on the Mount of Olives. So if we go to Isaiah chapter 34, there's some pretty wild stuff here, right? So it says, 34:2, the indignation of the Lord is against all nations and his fury against all their armies. He's utterly destroyed them. He's given them over to the slaughter. Also, their slain shall be thrown out. Their stench shall rise from their corpses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. All the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll. All their hosts shall fall down. I think the falling down is talking about the bad angels. As a leaf falls from the vine and the fruit falling from a fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Indeed, it shall come down on Edom and on the people of my curse for judgment. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. So I think what's happening is that Jesus is coming in the clouds. He's coming from the area of Bozrah, and he's coming even from the east, from Teman. So he's coming from the east. He's traveling west to Israel. The goal is to put his feet down on the Mount of Olives. And I think this is kind of a Hail Mary, if you will, on Satan's part to try to keep Jesus from coming down. I think this is where he's going to probably these 200 million. This is my, my speculation, but I would suggest that they will form some kind of a wall or a dome over Jerusalem to try to keep Jesus out so that those inside, Satan or the Antichrist and his forces, can then try to destroy the last remnant of the people of Jerusalem. I think Satan is no dummy. I think he knows that the best he can do against God is not a defeat, but a stalemate. And a stalemate is just as good, right? And the stalemate would be, you know what, God, you keep heaven, you go hang out with people there, and I'll keep earth, okay? And we'll both have our little fiefdoms and everybody's happy. And Jesus is, no, you're not keeping anything. I'm taking it all back. I'm going to redeem it all, and you got to go. And anybody that signed up with you and has allegiance to you, they got to go too, right? And so this is where I think it's going to be an epic battle at the last days. And it's crazy because I remember so many times in Calvary Chapel, we talked about the rapture. Yay, woo. And then it was just kind of like, well, we're not really interested after that. It's going to really suck. And God's going to pour out his anger on a Christ rejecting world. And and the Jews are going to get totally toasted, but then he's going to come and kind of help them out at the end.
He's going to
And
beat
that was the end of the story.
the Father God's going to beat the snot out of his guy, but that loving Son God, he's so
I
loving.
know.
He would never put his bride through any tribulation. I mean, he
That's
promised us
right.
no tribulation. He told his disciples, "You will face no tribulation in the world. What they did to me or what they're going to do, they'll never kill you. They'll never persecute you." I'm being very sarcastic, everybody, but
Yeah, I know. Say
it
my
dovetails.
sarcasm meter was going off.
Well, this is interesting what you were saying. Has was Hasatan giving a strong delusion in thinking that he can actually have a seat set aside for the bride after all he's going for the bride? A little different than what Doug was saying, but this is Hasatan under that strong a delusion that he might even think he can defeat the Creator, the God that created him. Because again, you see it in humans, even so. And this was a more powerful entity than we are as humans. So is it possible that he is deluded? I personally
Yeah.
believe he's doing his
Oh yeah.
job wrong, but it's it.
Well, yeah.
It's not like God didn't know
I
what
think
he's
he is
going to do.
deluded.
Yeah.
I mean, I think certainly God is allowing him to do his thing. No doubt about that. But it says in Ezekiel, it says, "You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom, not halfway full, but full and perfect in beauty." This guy was pretty darn amazing. "You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone is your covering. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God, aka the New Jerusalem, and you walked back and forth in the midst of the fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways." It also says you were in Eden, right? I missed that. Anyway, you walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you. And here's an interesting little linguistic thing: by the abundance of your slandering, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore, I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, or the New Jerusalem, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. And here goes: you corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. He corrupted. So I don't know how exactly that works, but Satan corrupted his own self. So somehow he became so enamored of himself. He thought he was so good looking, so gorgeous, so smart. And I've definitely analyzed his game plan, and I think it's brilliant. Thank God that God is better and God is smarter. Okay. But Satan's brilliant. And it kind of goes like this. I mean, it's really quite simple, eloquent and simple, and of course, devilish. God makes the planet, he gives the keys to Adam. Satan comes along. Satan, who's known. Satan is not some random snake just slithering about, but he is God's trusted prime minister. They know this guy because it says you were in Eden, the garden of God. So he was already there. And Adam and Eve were not freaked out. They're like, "Oh, we know you." And he came along and he said, "Hey, did God really say?" And instead of trusting God, they listened to somebody else. And just like that, they took a bite of that fruit, and Adam essentially gave over the keys of dominion to the planet. And this is where I've talked about that tablet of destinies that Enlil was holding. Enlil is Satan. I've explained that. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. "O Halel, how you have, son of the dawn, Halel ben Shachar, how you have fallen from heaven," etc. He was the one who, according to the Sumerian myth, Enlil took earth as his portion, and Anu, the creator god, took heaven as his portion. And ever since that moment, that is when the affairs of men and the ability to dictate the fates of men, that was in the hands of Enlil, because he had stolen the Anu ship. He'd stolen that, or usurped that authority of the creator, and he had taken it to himself. When he and Jesus meet up, and they're on top of Mount Hermon, and he shows them all the kingdoms of the world. He says, "Hey, just bow down, man, because all this has been delivered to me, and I can give it to whoever I want." Jesus didn't contest it. He didn't challenge him. He didn't say that's ridiculous. He's just like, hey, no thanks, right? And Satan truly did have the keys. And that's why it's so significant when we started off in Revelation chapter 1 that Jesus said, hey, I've got the keys of death and Hades. I've got the keys now. Satan used to have them, but now I have them. And what I think he's going to do when we see that it said, we'll get to this in chapter 13, that the beast is going to have authority over every tribe, tongue, and nation. I don't personally think that it's God giving him that authority, just in the same way God didn't give authority to Satan in the beginning, but Adam squandered it. Adam lost it. He forfeited that authority. And I think the freedom that we have in Christ, as the human race, without getting into that too much, but I think that what's going to happen is Satan comes and he says, oh boy, those two witnesses, they're bad news. I can help you out. Just sign right here on my little dotted line and I'll take care of those guys. And I think this is when humanity, once again, collectively, we give over our prerogative of self-governance, and we give this over. This is when Michael gets the boot. This is when what Paul talks about, the one who restrains, that he will be taken out of the way. It's not the Holy Spirit. It's talking about Michael. Michael, according to the book of Daniel, it says that he is the one who stands watch over your people. Okay, that sounds great until Daniel says there's going to be a time of trouble unlike any other. And you're like, well, what's Michael doing? Michael gets booted off the job. And that's what Paul talks about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. He says that he says, know for certain that the son of perdition is going to come, and that there's going to be this apostasion. That is the same word that's used for a divorce certificate. So, boy, I remember the day when I was in Dallas at the pre-trib rapture conference. Oh my gosh.
That's the rapture.
Ooh, talk about spinning, talk about double spinning. Oh my gosh. So here they were. He says, let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away happens, right? The Greek word there is apostasia, right? So a sister word to that is apostasion, which is a divorce document. And obviously a divorce document says, hey, this relationship is over. See you later. And so the apostasia is that event. It's an abstract noun. It's the event of the relationship is now over. See you later. And then it says that, and what is restraining the mystery of laws is at work, and only he who now restrains will do so until he's taken out of the way. Michael will be taken out of the way, not by force, but by contract. And that will be the covenant of death that the human race as a whole is going to make. And then Michael loses his job. He's out of work now. And now Satan has unfettered dominion, authority over the affairs of men. Once again, thankfully, thank God, it's only going to last 3.5 years. But during that time on planet Earth, it's going to be ugly.
Well, and again, we would differ on that. I believe what's happening is Michael is actually winning the war in the heavens, and Satan is cast
in the heavenly,
down.
yes.
Yeah. In other words, what has happened is Michael is essentially standing down. In other words, okay, let him run amok. Not that he defeated Michael, not that Michael, and I get what you're saying. You're saying that it's because of this covenant with death.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as Eve was deceived, and then Adam made a decision to, it does not. The text does not say he was deceived. Why Adam ate is we could have a discussion on that one day in the future. Did he eat because he was just doing this to God, or was what he was aware of the consequences? And how is he a type of Yeshua? What did Yeshua do? He laid down his life for his bride. Adam was aware of the consequences of eating. What was going to happen to Eve after she had eaten? She was going to die. So what did Adam know?
I don't agree with that.
Well, again, it's the text does not say.
I know.
text does not say
But I
either
mean,
way.
Numbers chapter 30 gives an out for the man. He can annul any vow that his wife takes in the day that he hears about it.
Well,
So,
but
I mean, I've heard this theory before. I don't agree with the theory. I think I think he was using her as a test, as the test dummy. And
no, the text doesn't
you
say
know,
that. It says
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
she was deceived. She and women, the design of women, they are. I think they're much more attuned a lot of times with
Yeah,
hearing spirit, but they're also can be more easily deceived, whereas
sure.
men are more logical, analytical type things, and that's why the two are to become one. We make a much stronger unit. But I was
Yeah,
gonna. We can
yeah.
table that.
I
We can table that for another day.
yeah, I think that's a whole different discussion. Yeah.
So it is.
But so I was gonna say, well, let me just follow this up, because in Daniel chapter 8, it says, talking about the horn, and it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. So I think this is where the beast, who's now become entwined with Satan, I think he's done his victory lap here on earth. He's done the abomination of desolation. He's given God the middle finger. Michael's out of a job now. So now
You're
he oversteps
breaking
his
up. Really,
bounds, and
you're breaking. Oh, there you are. You were breaking up really bad.
yeah,
Like so.
yeah.
Hey, and I think we'll table
So
this.
yeah,
Go ahead and finish your thought though.
yeah. So he's going to overstep his bounds. The beast, the little horn, he's going to be doing his victory lap here on the planet. He's now got all of humanity under his thumb, and then he thinks, because he has delusions of grandeur, he thinks that he can then go and challenge Michael and the heavenly host, and that's where he gets pushed back. So yeah, Michael still has complete authority in the heavens, and there's no chance Satan's going to win. So we totally agree on that, and that's where I think, that may be the point at which Satan is then cast to the earth. That seems
Well,
logical to me, but we'll, you know,
well, me and Dina talked about that last night, and we're going to get there about how the dragon spews this water like the symbol of chaos after the daughter. It talks about the children of the woman who keep who have the testimony of Jesus and keep the commandments, and how the earth swallows up the water to protect the woman. And so I'm looking forward to getting into those
mm,
passages. But I'd like to table this in Joel 2, and maybe obviously we'll get into chapter 10 next week. But I kind of want to go back and spend a little more time on these locusts and go back into. I'm going to do I'm gonna bone up on Halissa's teaching about the locusts that were sent in ahead of Israel. But and again, I'm seeing this as a
hmm
revelation, as a larger, greater exodus. In other words, we're about to go into the kingdom. We just need to persevere. And how the locusts were sent in ahead of the Israelites to essentially either assist or even win battles on behalf of Israel. They didn't even have to physically fight some of these battles. And so I want to get into Joel's 2 locust army, and just I'll go ahead and let everybody know so you're not in suspense. I don't believe this is the charismatic version of how they, have you ever heard that, Doug? Put yourself. Have you ever heard some of the charismatic teachings on this, and how this is us? This is the charismatic church,
well, I
the
know there's
Christian.
a song that talks about, you know, yeah, yeah, I disagree with that, because they're like bad
No,
guys. They're
no,
not the good guys.
it's
I don't know how you
the
spin it, but
song.
they're definitely
No,
bad guys.
it's
These
like
these
no.
bugs that come out are bad. Yeah.
So again, there is an interpretation of Joel 2 that this is the Christian church. That the Christian church is doing this, but I
Yeah.
don't think we're doing a service to these to this fifth and sixth trumpet if we don't link it back up to these locusts that we're seeing in Joel and discuss that, and then we'll jump into
Yeah,
10, which is
for sure.
sort of an
Yeah.
interlude anyway before
Okay.
Doug and I have a really
Yeah.
good time differing on Revelation 11. So
We'll have fun. It's all good.
yeah, we will.
Cool. Well, let's save it till next week. And yeah, awesome. Well, very good. This was fun. Always an amazing time to go through the book of Revelation with you. And thank you, everyone out there. We love your questions. We try to get as many as we could, but can't get to all of them. So check out the new book, God's Divorce. It is on Amazon. I put the link in the chat. So check it out. And we will see you next week. God bless you. Stay in the Word.